Welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T Choctaw, MD, JD, where the doctor helps you unlock your full potential by equipping you with tools and knowledge in the areas of health, wealth, and wisdom, anchored in his experience as a business executive, a physician surveyor for the Joint Commission, a former mayor, and over 50 years of experience as a general surgeon. You've got questions, he's got answers. So let's get started. Here's Dr. William T Choctaw, MD, JD.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very, very special guest, Brother Keith Hanson, who we've known for a number of years, but who's been involved with some very unique activities, specifically involving education and involving our youth. And because we were so impressed with the work that he has done, we invited him to join us on Healthy, Wealth, and Wise podcast, and he graciously agreed for him to share some of that. This is about leadership, and this podcast is part of our Leadership Masterclass. And so our hope is that as you listen to the work of Brother Hanson and other leaders, that you too will be inspired to do something like what he's doing, or to certainly assist him or help him in doing what he has been doing. So welcome again, Brother Hanson.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. So why don't we start off with just real basic stuff so tell us about yourself.
Well, I've been involved with the youth. One of the things we were speaking about was youth and education, and I've been at the church there for over 32 years. And the last probably 12, 15 years of that, I've worked with our youth, and that's one of my passions, to help our youth and try to educate them, prepare them for education, prepare them for their future. And so that's how I got involved. And my three kids, the things I try to help and share with the people are the things that I've done with my three kids. So It's something that I've learned through OJT, I guess you could say, and like to share it to try to help others.
What is OJT?
On the job training.
Oh,
where you do it while you learn while you're doing it.
Oh, okay. I got it.
Starting off with my son first, then our daughter Jasmine, and our last daughter Jada, who's getting ready to graduate soon here with a degree in neuroscience, as a matter of fact.
Really? Oh, congratulations. So how did you get started with this interest? So was it just...
Well, the interest came about by need. Some of the things, as you know, a lot of things that are made available or that happen are due to a need that is there, and people try to fill the need.
Right.
And one of the things that is passion, and it started with my son, was addressing the issue of the lack of males on college campuses.
Yes.
A lot of times you go to the college campuses and the ratio of women to men is just overwhelming. And we went to different campuses as he was trying to start school. Some he had to go for different testing, and all the time it was every 10, 12 women, you'd see one guy. Right. And so there was it's a lot of young and especially African American males that are wise enough to attend college, but don't, for many reasons, that they didn't know what to do, how to get there. They didn't have the resources, on and on and on. So myself and some others started looking at that and then trying to meet the need and help with that through other organizations, some that we got involved with. One, the Council on African American Parenting, which is phenomenal. There used to be one called College Bound. And
yes, I've heard of that.
That was one that we did originally. And then there were some issues there and it went away, and it had been there for years. And then through the things that I learned, try to share with other parents, families, to help them along in their journey and, stuff like that. So it became a passion. And then through our church, trying to help our kids there at church. Again, like I said, the male representation of African American males, Latino males is low, very low. And so that was one of the things we tried to address. And then it just became a thing that I've grown to love and do. And then there was a need at church there to help with the Sunday school, first with the boys, then they merged them together. So we started doing that, and then with the high school classes. And I thought that's the most perfect time to try to help address these kids with their educational needs, the boys and girls, as they are freshmen. As you know, the scripture tells us without a vision, the people perish. And
Yes.
A lot of kids had no vision. So therefore, you know what happened after that? They would become seniors and they had no idea what to do, where to go, and how to get there. So I would try to catch them at an early age, provide different vehicles to help them achieve their educational needs and stuff like that.
I think the work you do is extraordinary, and I agree with you 1,000%. It has been one of my passions, specifically the issue of men, specifically and boys, and specifically men and boys of color, because then it becomes a big conundrum. You're expected to lead a family, provide for your family, do all these things, but yet the source or the opportunities are limited for you. One of my passions, and you'll, as you listen to other podcasts, Rudy Chavarria is a college mentor who I met recently last month, and who's also going to talk this month about college and recruiting students for college. And we were sharing the same system, the same opinions about it's the men or the boys that many times are not advancing as much as they should, and at the same time have double, triple expectations on them.
Right.
And a lot of times it's what you think, whatever you think is what you can do. If you don't think you can do something, then you won't be able to do it. I've said many times, and I'll stop with this. I'm a physician today because my mother, a 17-year-old girl who got pregnant in high school and had to drop out, told me I would be a doctor when I was 5. At least that's the earliest I remember it. And back then, if you were a girl and you got pregnant, you couldn't go back to school. Her education was over. She decided that she would put that into her firstborn, and she did. She did. Wow. And here I am. So I'm a strong believer in that. And I do believe that it's different with men and boys.
Yes.
Girls tend to be, particularly as teenagers, they tend to be very verbal, write very well, speak very well. Boys tend to get that, but they get it later. Boys, a lot of times in high school or junior high school, are considered to be problems because they're hyperactive. And I gave another podcast on this. I think we use far too much medication and have overprescribed for ADHD. It's not hyperactive. You, as a teacher, must find out how best to teach them. That's what good teachers do. Instead of drugging them and blaming them.
That's exactly true. One of the key things, one of the things is that, like you said, some kids get diagnosed as ADHD, this, that, and the other. But one of the things I try to tell our children, first and foremost, that they have to take ownership of their education, and they have to be the driving force. They have to be their own advocate for it. When they go to school, it's that teacher's job, as you said, to quote unquote teach. But many times some will have instructors and not teachers. And you need to, when you roll in there first, you need to do an assessment to find out, do I have an instructor or a teacher that's really willing to work with me, help me, and get me where I need to go? And then depending on the subject and the skill of that individual, they can make it entertaining and exciting to where you won't have these kids that are hyperactive, quote unquote, the disruptions in the class. I can think when I was in high school, went to St. Nemas High School, and there was a history teacher of all things that she had a wide range of kids that nobody else would deal with in that class, but they came in there, they performed, and they did what she did because she made it interesting, and she taught. She taught us a lot of world history stuff. She taught us about, different maps and countries and a lot. She was, before she became a teacher, a lot of the places she went, she was a nun and traveled there doing mission work. So she had first person knowledge, and she captivated the audience. She had expectations for you when you came in there. She set goals for you to learn and for you to do, and people rose to the occasion. And I saw it then as a kid. And then 1984, when I was in West Germany and accepted the Lord, became a Christian, the church I went to, the same thing. That pastor had expectations for us to learn and what he expected us to do. And he taught as though we were in a college. So you rose to that occasion and you became what they wanted you to do. So again, what you said, many of our kids, they're not problems. They just have to, like you said, people have to take an interest, whether through the parents or the teachers, and find out what they're interested in, meet that need, and they will soar. I think of two girls at our church there. They were doing poorly in school. They didn't like going to school. And I asked them, as their Sunday school teacher, what is the reason they said that they were bored. They didn't like what was being taught, the curriculum, this, that, and the other. And I said, what interests you? And both of them, one was saying theater, the other said music and theater, or this, that, and the other. So I talked to their parents and had them go to the Performing Arts High School at Cal State LA. And I would see them, because I ride the train in the morning into Union Station. I would see them on the train excited about going to school. They would go there. They thrived. They soared. They went on to college. They both, I believe, went to the New School in New York for performing arts and things like this. But just that switch changed their love for education and their excitement about going to school, you know? So a lot of times people have to put in the work, again, whether the parents, the teachers, to try to meet the needs of those kids and keep them stimulated and keep them, learning. Otherwise, they're not going to do well.
Well, the professions that I admire the most are teachers and social workers.
Oh, yes.
And because in my life, as a foster kid and coming up to numerous foster homes, that was.
Say that again, a foster kid?
Yeah, I was a foster kid.
I just found that out the other day and I was amazed. I was like,
is that right? But I tell the story for the reason that you were just talking about, that it is possible with good supervision and advice and people willing to help like you and others, that you can take a kid like me or with my background and get us to that other level. And that is the essence of what we're trying to do, even with these podcasts. I can tell you that had it not been for some of those good teachers in high school, junior high school specific, because that's where I was a problem kid, I would not have made it. I would have been off doing something crazy, because at that point, again, I was separated from my mother. And so I was sort of lost, if you will,
Right.
But I call them angels, these good teachers and counselors. And I have always felt, and this has been my experience, that a lot of times the counselors presently do not give minority kids the benefit of the doubt. The minority kids come in and say, I want to go to UCLA. And they said, well, you know what? Most of our kids go to junior colleges, and they divert them to a junior college, which sometimes junior colleges are great, but sometimes they can be a trap.
Yes.
Two reasons.
Yes.
Kid goes to the junior college because they figure it's easier than going to UCLA or USC for the first 2 years. It's not easier. Many times it's probably more difficult. The second thing, they go to the junior college, but they don't take a full course. They take 1 or 2 classes that they can take for 5 and 10 years. And so they never graduate. So it's like a loop that they get stuck into. And so, my approach has been to say, think bigger, think bigger,
yes.
Think Ivy League, think 4-year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because that's where we need our best and our brightest.
Do you ever realize, and I realized it, especially when I was in the military, and then I started putting my mind on rewind, thinking about most of the people I know from the Midwest and especially down the South going to the East Coast, their kids don't go to junior college. They expect them. It is an expected thing that once you graduate high school, you are going to a university, and that's the way it is. And that's just the way they roll. And that's just how they do. Out here, it is a big thing to go to junior college. But what I tell students now, what I tell our youth, if they have the academic wherewithal, and if they are at grade levels and things that they are acceptable or accepted, how can I say it? If they have their A through G requirements and things tight and right, their 3-point average up to where they're able to be accepted to a 4-year college, then that's what they need to do by any means necessary.
Absolutely.
I tell them about that. there are so many ways for you to get there and pay for your school. A lot of kids, I tell them, some say their parents make too much money. And I tell them that there's a difference between need-based scholarships and merit-based scholarships.
Yes.
My daughters, and even my son, but the daughters especially, were on fire with it. Whenever they found out about a scholarship that was available, they were on it. And they had money flowing. My youngest daughter even did it the best before she was a freshman. She had over like $6,500 in scholarship money. And then she was in our Inland Valley newspaper this year in December. She was one of the first recipients of one of the scholarships she got that was renewable. Every year that you're in college, you show them your classes and they give you another stipend of money for every year you're there. So I tell them, don't let money be a restriction from you getting educated. And I think it's very important, if they're able to go to a 4-year college or go to college at all, the first year that they're able to go, I think it is imperative that they be on the college campus so that they're able to learn how to matriculate through all the different things that are there, learn to utilize all the resources that are there, learn to take care of business all the way around.
Right.
So it's I tell them first and foremost, and this is why I think reach back at a freshman age and try to put in their mind that you need to do these things. I'll tell you this real quick, and this is something that I learned years back, and I was staggered. One of the ladies I work with, her daughter, we were working a Saturday, and she was our chief information officer, and she brought the daughter with her, and she was going to her office, and the daughter wanted to stay there where we were loading software on computers and stuff like this. And so the little girl sat there, and she started talking with us, and somebody asked her, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And she said this little girl was 8 years old. And she said, "After I finish college, I want, what. And I didn't hear anything she said. I was like, at 8 years old, there was no question of, if I go, I hope to get in. I'm going to try to go. I'd like to. It's a thought. I don't know what to do." And the CIO was a good friend of mine. She passed, but she's Asian. And she said, "At my house, the way we do, college is an extension of high school. Just like kindergarten, you go to first grade, and from junior high, you go to high school. And after high school, you go to college. That's part of the progression. It's not an option. It is the way that it is."
Absolutely.
So I had put that in her mind, and that's the way she thinks. And I was like, the power of that was phenomenal. Well, I was blessed to see this young girl graduate high school. She went on to Harvey Mudd. She got a degree in engineering, electrical engineering. And then she always had a passion for teaching and missions. And again, like I said, she was Asian, but her country she wanted to go to always was to Africa. So she went, I believe, with the Peace Corps for a year or two and taught math and stuff, and then came back, got her master's degree. But I still remembered from an 8-year-old little girl told me that after I finish after I finish college, I want to be an engineer. I want all these things. And it was already done in her mind. The power of that at 8 lived out through her life, and it did what she thought.
Well, as I said, for me, it started at 5. And one of the things that I do when I talk to young people, and particularly young people who maybe have not had it easy through life early on, pregnancies and other types of things, that parents are extraordinarily powerful with their children. And I tell them, I said, be careful what you say to your children, because what you say, you can make occur, good or bad. Right. You can say, "John, you will become a doctor. You will be a doctor." Or you can say, "John, you're no good. You're bad, blah, 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 blah." So I tell parents, I say, use your words carefully. Yes, you can discipline your child, but do it in a way that does not defeat their character at all. Just to share a real quick example, as you were saying, I have 6, my wife and I have 6 grandkids, and that's the world, just a beautiful world. And my oldest grandson is named Vincent. And Vincent was having some challenges in junior high school. Vincent lives in Chula Vista, California, with his dad, my son Preston. So my son called me and said, "Dad, would you have a conversation with Vincent? Blah 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 blah." And I said, "No problem." So I talked to my son and I said, "Why don't you let him visit us for a week?" And so he came up and a good kid, basically. But it was the same basic thing about teacher doesn't like me, teacher's mean, teacher's bad. And I sort of looked at him and he's, what was he? Probably like about 14. And I said, Vincent, nobody cares. Nobody cares. I said, you're going to have good teachers and you're going to have bad teachers. Nobody cares if your teacher is a good teacher or a bad teacher. I said, the issue is, what are you going to do?
That's right.
What are you going to do? And I was able to, I think we were able to have a conversation where he understood it was up to him. That, the quality of the teacher itself, it doesn't really matter. Some will help him, some will not help him, but it's basically a wash. And, now he's applying to college, 3.8 average, and, a scholar. He's a soccer aficionado at his high school. And so he'll be starting college next year.
Okay, good. Where's he going to go to?
Well, he's applying to all the UC schools and maybe some schools outside of UC.
Did he receive any scholarships for soccer?
He looked into some, didn't receive. He has one scholarship, not for soccer, his one academic scholarship, but he looked into some scholarships for soccer, but hasn't gotten anything specifically yet. But the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of our kids never get to that point. They don't get past, I can't afford it, my parents don't have any money, all of which I'm sure is true. But what I learned, particularly if you go to certain schools, like an Ivy League schools, they pay you to come.
That's right.
Because you're doing them the favor.
That's right.
And I will, as I went through Tennessee State, I struggled with money. I worried about it almost every day. But when I got to the point where I was able to get into a Yale says, you don't have to worry about money anymore. You will not drop out of Yale because you don't have any money. Now, if you have scholarship, if you have grades problem, it's a different issue. But we will not allow you to drop out because you don't have money. And they didn't. And I did not drop out. So those things are there, but you got to get to that level. And most students don't know that. They don't.
One of the things, and to your point there about just what you said, could have ignited something in him that will help him soar for the rest of their life. I always say it's an aeronautical thing that your attitude will determine your altitude. And if your altitude is pointed up and you're excited about it and interested in it, you're going to soar and hit the clouds. I think of one of the things that you talked about, the power of persuasion and what we say to propel our kids into greatness. I always tell the youth about the bicycle. I said, as a kid, you look at that contraption and you have no business riding that thing. You don't know how to do it. You could fall. It's dangerous. You could get caught up in the gears and the spokes and all this. But because of the persuasion of a parent, a father, an uncle, or whatever, they tell you, you can do this. You can do this. And you're thinking, no, I can't. I don't know how to ride this thing. And then you're going to take the training wheels off. This is a death trap. But because you sit up there and gas them up, next thing you know, they're riding, they're doing something that they never have been able to do before or would have never done on their own because they wouldn't have tried it. And that sets them up for their life. And sometimes, different times in life, they may have not ridden a bike for years, but as soon as they see it, they can jump back on it.
Once you learn it, you don't forget.
Free into a level of believing into themselves and persuading themselves into doing something that they never thought they could do. So the power of persuading people to do stuff like that can set them into new heights and release them from the confines of, I could not ride a bicycle. I have to ride it with training wheels on. And before they know it, they're doing it. And so that's one of the things I was thinking of too. One of the things you said, a couple of things that are coming to mind, but one of the things is there's a guy named Jawanza Kajufu. He wrote a book called The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. And he talks about things of what people say and do that can help or destroy a young man. And he goes in many ways of explaining it. But one of the things he says is we start off how we love our daughters. We raise our daughters and we love our sons. Little girls at an early age, we start telling them, oh, you can't do like this. You got to sit like this. You can't talk like that. Oh, don't put your feet up on the table. That's not what ladies do. But little boys, they sit and laugh at it and let them learn survival of the fittest. So they just learn, again, OJT, where little girls is very deliberate and intentional, And so I think this is where we get little girls, like you said, that are on point, taking care of business. My daughters were homework machines, and they were self-sufficient. I didn't even a lot of times know what was going on, but they said, oh, it's taken care of. I got it. My son, I had a whiteboard, and we go through painstaking stuff, doing it over and over, but he got it. He learned it, but it was a way different.
It's boys and girls are different, and it's biological. You touched on it. One of the points I think is so important in terms of youth and youth development and scholarship, and that's competence.
Yes,
competence. Yes. The reason why I was able to, I think, in terms of what my mother told me, she told me I would be a doctor. Now, I didn't know why. I didn't even know what a doctor was, but that put a certain level of confidence in me. So my mother wouldn't lie to me because she's my mother, right? So I just took that with me till I sort of figured it out. And what I see a lot of times in school and even in families, that we destroy the confidence in our youth, again, by stuff we say to them when we get upset. Angry, and we criticize them by talking about how they look, if they're too fat, if they're too dark, if they're too tall, if they're too short, blah, 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 blah. We destroy that confidence. And once that confidence is broken, then it's difficult for them to move up and to get it back together again. And so we have to let them know that they can be anything. I used to tell my kids, there are no limits on you. There are no limits except what you put on yourself. If you want to do it, you can do it. So go for it. Go for it.
I tell people that raising children is like holding wet clay in your hand, and everything you do molds and shapes them. That's true. Whatever you do leaves a scar on them. It can be a good one or it can be a bad one. I think one of the things, too, that I was telling our youth is, two things. One, that whatever you go to school for, whatever you want to study, now there's been a shift. Back in the day, they used to tell kids, go to school and study what you love. I don't say that. You need to meet your education. You need to take control of it. It needs to meet these three requirements. Whatever you study needs to be scalable, sustainable, and marketable. If it does not meet those three requirements, you do not have a career. Okay, you have a job. And so therefore, then I went to explain them the difference between a career and a job. A career, I can put you in Djibouti, I can put you in Somalia, I can put you in Texas, and anywhere you go, you can get you a job because that's something that is marketable, it's scalable, levels for you to move up into, and sustainable by nature of what it is that you do. So you will be able to enjoy eating and living indoors. I was telling the kids, again, one of the things, and it started way back with Xavier, Pastor Dockery's grandson. He put him in a school in Hacienda Heights instead of with his friends because he was messing up. He took the initiative to take him out of that before he drowned and failed, and put him somewhere to be able to succeed. And he was very upset, and he was talking to me about it, and we talked, and I said to him, what's the problem with it? Go. There's a book called Grow Where You're Planted. I said, you're there, you go, you soar, you take care of business and do what you need to do and get it done. Don't worry about all those. He says, oh, I can't go there, and it's a school. I said, what's the difference? He says, oh, there's a lot of Asian kids over there. I said, so what's the difference? He said, I'm not as smart as them. He said, well, there you go. That's the truth. He said, I'm not as smart as them. I said, that's not true. And it was like E.F. Hutton. All those kids in the class kind of got quiet. And I said, if you do what they do, you will be as smart as they are. Yes. And they started listening. And through College Bound, we learned about some of these things that happen like this, that it is deliberate and intentional with their education. I asked them, I said, how many of you, when you come home from school, rewrite your notes? None of them raised their hand. I said, okay. I said, how many of you go to tutoring at least 2 to 3 times a week after you get out of school? None of them raised their hand. I said, how many of you go to Saturday school? None of them raised their hand. I said, these are some, if not all, of the things that if you did what they did instead of spending time on MySpace, Snapchat, this, that, and the other, video games, you got to take ownership. This is when I was telling them of your education at an early age, and you have to put into it. There is no free lunch. Okay. It's not just going to happen. It's not magic. I said, so through College Bound in Cerritos, their office was, and some of the people in the neighborhood there that were Asian was telling the people of College Bound that during the summer, the next year's grade, if they're going to the 8th grade, they have people work with their kids during the summer with their math, English, science books, all these on their own, going through the book at least once, if not twice, during the summer. So when they roll into class, it's the third time seeing it. If you saw it 3 times, you'd look like a superstar too. Right. So again, I said, if you did what they did, you will be as smart as they are.
Put in the work.
It is not
put in the work.
It's not inbred. It's not inbred. But we talked about this again with some of our own kids. A couple of them, want to put them out there, but it's true. Is it learned behavior or is it inbred intelligence? And I think of Brother Patrick and Sister Patrick. I knew them both before they were married and was friends with them. And then Brother Patrick and I went to college together. He helped me graduate, dragged me through. But their sons are brilliant, each one of them in their own way. And I said, is it because they have 2 brilliant parents that they produce brilliant kids? Or is it a system they have at their house that learned an appreciation for education, made them as brilliant as they are? There's a couple other families the same way, but that was the first one that came to mind. I've noticed some of the parents that appreciate and really work hard at their own education, they instill that in their kids, and therefore, so some of it is a learned behavior. I don't think it's necessarily just inbred by nature of the parents producing brilliant kids. So it takes work.
You just mentioned another church connection at St. Stephen's. I used to teach Sunday school at St. Stephen's back in the day. We're talking about the 70s now. Faith Patrick was in my class. Faith Patrick was always a 4.0 student, straight with everything. I knew her well. I watched her grow up. And one of my joys has been when I've seen her, married and with her kids and her sons and that sort of thing. But to your point, she was 4.0 in high school. She had it in her head that's the way she was going to roll. That's the way she was going to do it. And obviously, and I'm sure her husband's contributed to that, but she passed it on to her kids.
Yes.
The other thing that I see, and I want to get your thoughts about this, there's all sorts of traps for our kids. One trap for our kids, Trump University. My point very simply is a lot of things that are called colleges are not colleges. Okay. A lot of things that are called schools or universities are not universities. And what it does, it destroys the very best and brightest of our young people who barely get through high school, scrape together a few dollars, take out loans, whatever, and go to XYZ school, to get a certificate, but can't, going back to your point, can't do anything with that certificate. And even some of them are told that it's a college. It's not a college. It's not a college or a university. And so there are even traps that work against our kids, even the ones who try. Parents try. And a lot of times parents don't know. If they've not been enough to go through that experience, they don't know what that's like. And so many times it ends up being a double, triple whammy for our kids, particularly minority kids and particularly minority male kids.
Yes. I think one of the things we have to be willing, and I try to share the knowledge when we have it, as well as the parents have to be willing to receive it and do something with it. Next week, I think it's next week, February 10th, the Black College Expo is coming up. And back in the day, when my kids would go, a lot of times I would take boatloads, truckloads of the kids. If the parents, they're too busy, this, that, and the other. I want them to go by any means necessary, see what's there, learn and have that experience and see what's out there. But the parent involvement is paramount. I have a relative, her daughter is a brilliant girl. I want her to go. But the parent, when I told her about it happening, I think I have to work this, that, and the other. They have to take and make sacrifices for it. I have 2 other young boys. I'm going to try to take them. Their father died recently, and the mother is raising them now and taking care of them. Brilliant kids. And I said, if you can't take them, I'll take them. But the parents need to know what goes on, how it goes on, what's happening, so they know how to work with them and navigate the stuff. Many times, if you do what is necessary, you can prepare them for success before. Through College Bound, they have a couple of things that they learned. Not College Bound, Council on African American Parenting, that training up African American boys and helping them excel in math will give them the confidence to do anything and everything. So they have a program on Saturdays they do at UC Riverside. As a matter of fact, my daughter Jada, who's very good with math, is one of
my sons graduated from UC Riverside.
Did he? He's a good kid.
Your oldest son, yeah.
And they work with the kids and help them, tutor them with their current math, but prepare them for their next year's math, so that during the summer, they take a 6 weeks class with adults. They're sitting in the first 2 rows. They have these T-shirts that they wear. They have certain things they have to do. They have mandatory tutoring with a person before they go to class, and that propels. There was one of them, Chris Okiani. This kid was below junior high and taking college level classes with adults, but because of the preparation they did, he soared. Okay. And some of these adults were tripping that I'm grown and these young kids in these first 2 rows are killing the math, but they put in a lot of work with them. And so it propels them. When they do it for 6 weeks, it gets their next year's math out of the way. My son, the first year he did it and he went to Etiwanda High School, I went back and showed them what he had done. And I caught all kind of problems. I had to go to because they were like, this is something that quote unquote, most kids, they didn't want to say African American kids don't do during the summer. They don't take extra classes. So they were saying, got to do that.
I did that during the summer. Yep.
This is not, they would say, this is not normal. And I'm like, okay, but it's not illegal. And I had to fight with them. But after going through the motions and they saw what was happening, then it was well received. And they gave them the next year's credit and propelled them so that you finish calculus before you graduate. So there was no question about, are your math skills good enough to get you into college? And that was a big problem for our African American boys. So again, it takes work. We was going to Saturday school. We go to the program that's on Sunday. These things take work, sacrifice in order to make it possible so that you can matriculate through your years of freshman, this, that, and the other, and little things that you learn and transfer to these kids along the way to help them be successful. Right now, there's a huge number, well, not a huge, a large number of African American boys that get into college as freshmen, but by the time the 4 years is over, they vanish. They
yes, because you got to graduate. Just going to college alone is not enough. You got to graduate.
Correct. That's the other thing we have to address and help them make wise choices and keep their skills together where they don't fall apart. I think of one of our young boys who did that, and I had him in high school. He was going to Grambling, and all of a sudden he called me and was telling me there was some problems, and I didn't know what happened. Thought he ran out of money, but that wasn't a problem, it was academics. But his backup plan was to go in the service. He went in the Air Force, he soared and is killing it and doing great. So he had enough wherewithal to know that the toilet was getting ready to flush on what he was doing, but he had a plan to do something else, rescue himself and keep going forward, which he did.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD. Be sure to check out other great episodes covering areas of health, wealth, and wisdom at thwwp.com. And while you're there, be sure to check out the books, blogs, and other literature in your preferred format. And don't forget to leave a review, subscribe, share, and support the podcast. That's at thwwp.com. You've been listening to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD.